Step 1, step 3. You guys remember?
I need a refresher on it.
Well, okay. Just brainstorm. What would you think would be a good step 1?
Highlight the problem.
Yeah, with your eyes. Use your eyeballs and look at it and read the words. And most importantly, like Denitra said, understand, right? So we want to read and understand this question. What is it saying? What is it asking us to do? Do we understand it all? Maybe do some little outlining of just some basic thoughts, outlining the problem, making note of any important stuff. So this one's pretty simple. These basic algorithm scripting questions are usually pretty straightforward. They're not trying to trick you. They're just giving you some experience in problem solving. So we want to truncate a string if it is longer than the given maximum string length. Return the truncated string with a ... ending. So do we understand the word truncate? We understand what that means.
Yes.
What does it mean?
To shorten.
To shorten. Okay. Yeah. To make it shorter. Okay. And they're mentioning arguments to us. Do we know what arguments are? What arguments means in this context? Does it mean somebody's getting in an argument?
It means what you pass through to the function, right?
Okay, sorry about that. Folks ran by and had some announcement for me about on-site stuff. So yeah, by the way, if you guys want to meet on site for class, then you're welcome to. I guess Phil wants to start that next week for Monday. I'll double check with that and confirm with you guys on Wednesday. But if you guys want to come in to the office, I think we're gonna start letting people do that. Come into the office on like Mondays, if you'd like, and we'll still be running the session online, but you can come in person to the office. Okay, so back to this question. Sorry. So what does an argument mean in this context? Can you guys summarize? And for those of you who aren't answering, I want you to try to write this down yourself in your notes. So generally speaking, if you can't think of what something means in the first like 5 or 10 seconds, what should you do? Hello? Bonnie, what should we do if we don't understand something within like the first 5 seconds of reading it or looking at it, or maybe 10 or 15 seconds of trying to think about it?
Look it up.
Yep, perfect. Look it up. Just Google it. That's what it's there for. Professionals do this all the time. We don't memorize everything. We regularly look things up. Cool. So arguments are referring to inputs to this function, right? You can give any number of arguments you want to a function. I'm not sure what the limits are to that, but I'm actually not sure what the upper limit of how many arguments you can give to a function is. I assume something in the order of like 10,000 or something like that. But maybe it's more, who knows? So right here, we write our arguments for the function, and we have 2 arguments. One's called str, one's called num, and we are expecting this one to be a string and this one to be a number. There's a cool thing called TypeScript, which allows you to establish, to require a data type on your variables and your properties to require your arguments to be the correct types when they're received by the function, so that you don't get silly errors like accidentally sending a number instead of a string or a string instead of a number. And also you could, if you were just writing vanilla JavaScript, you can kind of structure your functions to test to make sure that they're only receiving strings or the correct data types in the correct place. But actually that's really suboptimal, and that's why we came up with TypeScript. So we'll talk about TypeScript in the future, but in general, in this case, we know that we are going to receive the correct data. So these things right here are called arguments. Actually, no. In the context of when we're writing the function, so arguments are actually referring to the real data that's going to be passed to this function. So in this case, our 2 arguments are here and here on line 8, where it says a tisket, a tasket, a green and yellow basket, and then number 8. These are arguments. So we use the term arguments to refer to actual data that's being passed to the function. And within the context of writing the function, we refer to these here as parameters. String and num, we refer to these as parameters. Okay, so we read this, we understand what they're asking us to do. They want us to truncate the given string if it's longer than the given number. That seems easy enough. So how do, like, some high level thinking, like maybe, we have like 2 steps, right? See how long the string is. Test to see if it is longer than the given max. If it is, truncate it and add ... Okay, so what's step 2? of our multi-step process. We have step 1, read and understand the question. If we don't understand something, we should look it up. Anybody remember? We just talked about this last week.
I think you would do the pseudocode next, but you kind of did that already somewhat.
Yeah, so I mean, this one's so simple that if you even just like read and understand and break it down, you start kind of merging into step 2. Sometimes like step 1 and step 2 kind of merge into each other because in the process of going through and splitting up the question and thinking about how you might approach it, you start kind of going into step 2. So we kind of started step 2 already, I guess you could say. This is kind of a fluid process, so we don't have to get, in practice, it's a free-flowing process that just kind of, one step should flow into the next step, right? So yeah, but I guess this is kind of like, this would qualify as pretty much being pseudocode, right? So step 2 is writing our pseudocodes. We have high-level pseudocode, and we have like nitty-gritty breaking down all the steps. So high level, this is pretty much it, right? Like we need to be able to see how long is a string. So we need some way of like detecting how long that is. And then we need to test it to see if it's larger than this number. And then if it is, we have to modify it in some way. So how could we expand this pseudocode I have here to be more detailed? Like, what are some steps I could add? Am I kind of like combining any steps, or?
You could do as a if-then statement.
Okay. So like on line 11, if the length of string is longer than num, truncate string, add ... to the string, return str. Okay. Is there anything else I can kind of expand?
Maybe expand how you would truncate the string,
Okay.
kind of like what method you would use.
Yeah, so how would you, what comes to mind?
The only experience I have with truncating is kind of with arrays, so using splice, but I'm sure that wouldn't work with a string.
Are you sure it wouldn't, or you just don't know?
Actually, that's where I was with it too.
Splice string.
So
hit up
splice
Google.
does work, should work on array-like objects, including strings. Because strings also have indexes in JavaScript, I think. Can splice work on strings in JavaScript? JavaScript splice is an array manipulation tool that can add or remove multiple items from an array. It works on the original array. It doesn't work with strings. Okay. So splice cuts stuff off, cuts sections out, or replaces sections, or deletes sections, or modifies sections of arrays. So is there something that can do that? Is there a similar method other than splice? So you can say, oh, okay, I don't really know what method that would be, but I'm going to say, okay, Google, help me out here. Methods for truncating or modifying array strings in JavaScript. Okay. Boop de boop.
I found something called a method called substring, and it worked with the function. So, but I've
Okay.
never heard of it. And it kind of works similarly to how you would use splice in an array. You give the index start and then the index end.
Okay. So it's a method, right? It's a
Yeah.
method that can be applied to strings. So it looks like that's what this lady is using in her example. So substring, it's a method that you can use. What are some other approaches that you could use to truncate a string?
Did we look up splice or slice?
We looked.
SPLICEL?
So
Right.
splice, yeah. So splice is SPLICE. Splice is a method that only works on arrays, and slice will work on strings
Strings.
and
So slice.
arrays.
Yes. Okay. So maybe slice.
Yeah. So there's probably a solution where you can use slice. So we did some Googling. We came up with two potential methods built in to JavaScript that we can use for truncation. We can use substring or we can use slice. Okay, cool. What else should we add to this pseudocode to expand it in detail before we get into writing our code?
What's the alternative? So if the string is less than the amount of the number, I mean, because if I'm assuming we're doing an if statement, correct?
Yeah,
If
so
else?
this is pretty much all the logic you need, right? If the length of the
Okay.
string is longer than the number,
Okay.
then do something. If it's every other case, it's the only other logical cases is basically just whether the length of the string is equal or less than the number. So we just tell it to truncate if it's longer, right? So then
Okay.
if it's not longer, then we don't do anything to it, right?
Gotcha.
So if we don't need to do anything to it, we just return the string without modifying it. So it's pretty simple. It's like one if statement. This is a very simple one, but this is like the start, like one of the first ones they give you for this section. So it's pretty simple. Cool. Okay, so what's step 3 of our process?
Do we start writing it?
Yep, write the code. So like last time I kind of expanded step 2 into like outline and then write the pseudocode, but yeah, it's kind of merged into just one step. So we can just call it step 2, part 1, step 2, part 2. So yeah, so step 3 would be write the code, start hammering out the code of your solution. So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes and I'll check back in like 5 minutes and see if you have something.
Where are they? At India's house?
Okay, so what are some solutions that we have for code so far?
I started off with if parentheses string dot length is greater than number, close parentheses, and then curly brackets. And then I couldn't decide if it was gonna, let new string equal string dot substring, 0 to 7, or if just string dot substring 0 to 7. And that's where I'm at.
Did you just type it out and see what each one did?
I'm actually just looking at it on paper right now.
So keep in mind, you can also console log in free code camp if you want. If you want to see like any return values of like your stuff, your values. Let's see here, substring. Okay, substring method, how does this work? 1 to 5. Oh, index to index. Got it.
I think that's correct, Martin. You just haven't reassigned the value of string to for str to that substring.
Yeah, there we go. I don't know. I think this is wrong. No, wait. Should be num -1, right? Oh, it's not. Okay. So good practice would be console log string tisket. Okay, tisket. So reading string.prototype.substring method returns part of the string between the start and end indexes. Oh, between. Interesting. So I guess there's a starting and then an ending. But it doesn't give the last letter of the index that would refer to the ending index. It just ends. Okay, so it doesn't provide the character on the end index. It provides the character on the start, from the start to basically like 1 before the end. Okay, so yeah, string.substring 0, num. Then I use concatenation. So concatenation is a cool feature of JavaScript where you can just use a plus operator to add strings together. Did anybody use the concat method? So feel free to post your solutions in the classroom chat and we can kind of look through various solutions, see how people approach this problem. Did anybody like iterate over the string and push the string into an array and do all kinds of fancy roundabout stuff? Sometimes I think of like really bad suboptimal solutions that are really fun. A merry little journey, but alas, suboptimal. Oh, concat is for arrays, not strings. Okay. Good to know. Okay, so it looks like Denitra, looks like your solution, you use slice, did the same thing, concatenated the triple dots, return the string. Okay, so if we're thinking about optimizing this solution,
I
are there
don't
any?
know if it needs 2 return strings, but here we are.
Sorry, could you say that again?
I said I don't know if it needed 2 return strings, but that's what I came up with. One inside and one outside.
Oh yeah, you don't actually need to, but it will
Probably
work.
not.
Like it will work fine that way, but
Mhm.
you don't need it. You don't need that additional internal return because you'll hit the external return whether or not the if statement evaluates or not. So
Gotcha.
yeah, but it will work. The algorithm will work just fine either way.